Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. And like I promised, we're back with some Virginia basketball. But actually, before we get to that, because this is a question that I got asked a lot since last Wednesday on National Signing Day, we did have official word that Devin Clark has officially signed with Virginia. That announcement was made on Wednesday. And if you're a Wahoo's 24/7 subscriber, you kind of followed it a little closely. As little of information that we had, we were able to kind of keep you up to date that although he didn't sign on Wednesday, there was still a chance that he was going to. And then about 30 minutes before the official announcement came up, we got word that it was going to be announced by the school. And Devin wanted to make it very clear that he was going to come to Whoville. We had that up on Wahoo's 24/7 so that people knew that he was, in fact, headed to Charlottesville. So that's a very big pickup. If you are a listener to the show and if you are subscribed to Wahoo's 24/7, you know how big of a fan I am of Devin Clark and his film and what he could bring to the Cavaliers. He's going to be a guy that you want to see develop, but you can't teach speed, and speed can have a lot. So having a guy like that in your secondary is a huge plus. So that was a good get by defensive coordinator John Radzinski and defensive backs coach and passing defensive game coordinator Hiram Cox. That was a good find by those two and a good job of closing it out rather quickly. So and also going through all the hurdles the last week. So Virginia signed a good one. So 2023 class has added one more. And on the 24/7 side, he is the second highest rated recruit for the class. His ranking is 87. So he's a very big deal for that. So, but let's get to some Virginia men's basketball. We're going to talk about the Cavaliers, who are coming off a very good bounce back win, a type of win that you want after not having the game that you wanted against your in-state rival, Virginia Tech. So they came out there, the 9 p.m. tip-off, and I'm so grateful that was the last 9 p.m. tip-off, at least until we get March Madness. Then maybe we're not so lucky, but at least that's the last regular season 9 p.m. tip-off. Virginia beat NC State 63-50, and honestly, I know NC State hanged around, and when you have a team like NC State that averages almost 80 points a game, you could always think they could have a chance to go back, but because of the way Virginia played, it didn't really seem like that comeback was on the cards for the Pack. Virginia played very sound defensively, and honestly, they played really sound throughout the entire game for the Who's. So let's bring up the box score first. Like as always, if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see this on your screen right now. If you're listening, I will talk about the key stats. These stats were available on Wahoo's 24/7 as well, so you can take a look at some of the stats from this box score. Again, Virginia beating NC State 63-50, a team that averages 80 points a game. 79.6 if you want to be very, very, very to the point. Yeah, it had 50 points. So again, a good defensive showing for them. And the person that they were really honing in on was DJ Burns, who ended up with 8 points. They worked a really well double team on him. Caden Shedrick. What a game for Caden Shedrick. There's a lot of questions around him. The last few weeks, he wasn't playing as many minutes. It seemed like his confidence was a little bit down, but when they needed him to step up, he did a great job on the double team with DJ Burns. Him and Jaden Gardner did a good job there. So it was a good day by Caden for the Cavaliers. He also had 10 points. He was 3 of 5 for shooting. So he had a really, really, really good game. He had 6 rebounds. So again, it was a good game by Caden, something that they needed, a good lift from him. When you have a team like Virginia, when you came into the season, you always thought this was a versatile roster. This was the type of roster that you would need when you're in a tournament setting. You adjust who your players are to what your opponent is best at. You need a guy like Caden Shedrick to be performing in order to succeed in that. Because if you have a big, you need to defend them. Caden did what he was meant to do that game. So again, it was a good game. A lot of Cavaliers ended in double digits, in addition to Caden Shedrick. You had Jaden Garner with 18 points and Reese Beekman with 15. Jaden Garner has been continuing to kind of go on his momentum from his last few games. He has certainly kind of picked things up lately. He's found his mid-range jumper, something that he was kind of struggling early on, but he certainly has kind of stepped up here. Everything is kind of clicking for UVA. No, they lost against Virginia Tech, and that was obviously not the result that they wanted. But momentum still seems to be in UVA's favor when you look at who is performing well in the right time. This is when you want these players to perform well. You want guys like Caden Shedrick, you want guys like Jaden Garner to kind of get on a roll here. And in the last 4 games, Jaden Garner is averaging 18.3 points per game. And he's honestly their most productive scorer in the front court. Um, so yeah, he might take some ill-advised mid-range jumpers here and there, but he was effective against NC State. He was 6 of 12 shooting. Um, he shot 62. He was 6 for 6 from the free throw line, and he was averaging about 60% from there. So again, this is good to see Gardner performing at this level at this point of the season. So I think everyone can agree that seeing Caden Shedrick answering the call and doing well when we've seen so much of the small ball lineup where we didn't see where Caden Shedrick were was going to fit, to see him come in and perform well, that's a huge boost for UVA, especially because look at the upcoming opponents for UVA. You have Duke, who have Kyle Foposki and Derek Lively. You have Boston College, which has Quinton Post. You have obviously North Carolina, who has Armando Bacot. Well, guess what? Bacot. Excuse me. I'm still sick. Don't hold anything against me. Imagine, last time they faced UNC, they didn't have Bacot in the lineup. He had to leave injured when they were playing in Charlottesville. So this time UVA will be traveling to Chapel Hill. So having Caden Shedrick performing well is certainly something that will help in defending. And obviously Clemson, they have PJ Hall. So there's a lot of opponents here that's going to give Virginia some issues in inside the paint and in the interior. So they would want a guy like Caden Shedrick to perform. Obviously, you have Ryan Dunn too, which surprisingly did not have many minutes. Actually, let's see here. He had 2 minutes during that game. It was kind of surprising. He's been performing well. So Ryan Dunn, I know a lot of people stand Ryan Dunn. I am a Ryan Dunn stan, and he's going to be a great player for Virginia. But it's good to have other options as well. And having Caden Shedrick perform again is more of a boon for the Cavaliers as we go down the stretch. But again, it was good to see that. But again, Ryan Dunn only had 2 minutes, but they were able to secure the win. So again, those are the two that kind of stand out to me as you go through the next few games. It's not a strenuous and hard schedule for the Cavaliers down the stretch, but you certainly have some games that could cause some challenges. So we're going to take a quick break. Then on the way back, we're going to talk about Virginia's offense in the game. Obviously, the defense obviously played a lot better, but we'll talk a little bit more about their offense in that game. And then we'll take a look at that schedule a little bit more as we count down to March Madness. And welcome back to the Good Old Podcast. I'm Jacquie Franciulli for Wahoo's 24/7. And just as a heads up, as you can tell, I'm still recovering from my illness. So if my voice kind of goes out a little bit, or I need to cut the podcast short, that's probably why. Just because I'm still not 100% yet. So before the break, we talked about Caden Shedrick and Jaden Gardner and what they were able to do in a game against NC State. And honestly, that was a great game. I think that was something that maybe I didn't focus on a lot in that first half of the show, was saying that NC State was a good team. I mean, is a good team. I mean, this was a good win for the Cavaliers, especially considering that this is a team that offensively can just turn it on at any point, especially from 3-point range. They have great shooters. So for them to defensively have a performance like that after having, quite frankly, a poor defensive showing against the Hokies just a few days earlier, that was good for the Cavaliers. So especially when you head to tournament season and you need that momentum, that was good to see. It was very disciplined performance defensively. Now, I'm gonna bring up the box score again if you're on YouTube. So, but it wasn't the offense. Great, they scored 63 points, but it wasn't the offense that we have come accustomed to, especially from two particular players. This is for the second straight game. Armand Franklin only had 2 points, and Ben Vanderplas had 4, and they've been quiet for the last 2 games, and these were the guys that when they went to small ball was really benefited from that, and honestly, the saying like, one of the things that I said was, "If Armand Franklin goes, Virginia goes," and that's what we saw, um, from that game, what from those games when they went small was Armand Franklin kinda being the bellwether of how that game was gonna go. But the last 2 games, these 2 have been a little bit more quiet. Now, and it's more understandable against NC State because they had to switch how they were getting those points offensively, which is what I like about this team and what I like about these athletes this year is that they're so versatile offensively and that Virginia can adjust their game to fit their opponent. In this case, what we noticed was Virginia only had 2 3-pointers in that game, both of them Isaac McNeely, who, by the way, we always talk about his shot, but I asked Tony Bennett actually about Isaac Manili's hustle plays and just his athleticism. I think a lot of people, when they talk about Isaac McNeely, will say like Isaac McThreely. We'll talk about his confidence in his shot, and I mean, like, yeah, he's good. He's a good shooter. He certainly is getting more confidence in his shot. He doesn't second guess himself as much, and he might not go with that extra pass as much as he did in the beginning. But that guy hustles. I mean, that big block that he had towards the end of the game, and even Tony Bennett mentioned that was a crucial block for them. And Tony even joked that, Isaac Manili is such a good kid, such a nice kid, that he kinda did the block and kinda just smiled and, like, laughed, and it's one of those things where, he was like, he's not gonna spit nails at you when he does a block, you know? That's Ryan Dunn. Ryan Dunn. That's Ryan Dunn there right there when he'll spit nails at you. Just kidding. But, yeah, so Isaac McNeely, I really like his athleticism. He had the 2 3-pointers for the Cavaliers. He finished, with 8 points there. He went 2 for 5 from 3, 3 from 7 from the floor, so, but what we noticed is that Virginia did really well against NC State touching the paint, and that was something, that was good to see. You saw Kihei Clark and Reese Beekman be very aggressive, towards the rim. I mean, there were sometimes where it was just unfair to watch K.A. Clark just kinda drive inside and go up the and lay it in, so, again, these were things that you liked to see because, again, it shows versatility, and again, when you're in a tournament, you have to have that versatility to find success. So, although we're not gonna talk to them talking about three-point shooting in this game, or we're talking about, them kind of being playing lights out, every game is different. In this game, the story was Caden Shedrick and their double team of DJ Burns with him and Ben Vanderplas kinda on them a bit, and then obviously Jaden Garner on the other side. That when you do that, that's usually when you set the trap like that, that's usually the story in this game. That's why it's not as high scoring for the Cavaliers, but they did a good job as far as getting inside the paint and adjusting to it. I'm curious with Duke in town, how Virginia will approach the Blue Devils. And like I said, if you look at the next few games for Virginia, it's a type of games that you can see Virginia kinda go on a quite a nice run. Obviously, playing Duke, I know Duke is coming off a significant loss, but Duke is playing at the JPJ on Saturday at a 4 PM tip. So, again, not I mean, they're unranked. I think this is the first time they're, unranked, I believe, since maybe the '90s is the last time Duke was unranked coming into Charlottesville. Where's David Teal when you need him? He is the guy that is full of facts. So yeah, Duke, I believe, is unranked for the first time since the '90s. They'll be coming to Virginia, and then Virginia will go to Louisville again. That I don't see much of a challenge there for the Cavaliers, and then Notre Dame will come to Virginia the following Saturday, and then Virginia will go to Boston College, and then they go to Chapel Hill. I mean, that's obviously a always a tough matchup for the Hoos is going to Chapel Hill. It's a tough matchup for anybody, but this is not, this is not the same UNC that we're used to. This team is not performing to what the expectations in preseason. So again, if Virginia is performing the way that we've seen them and playing to their capabilities, it's hard to see um it's hard to see the schedule being too much for them. And then they have both Clemson and Louisville at home to kind of end the season, which is a very nice way to kind of end things before the ACC tournament in Greensboro in March. So it's a good solid way to end the season. NC State, I think, was probably their one of their toughest tests. I mean, obviously Duke and North Carolina, you can't really brush them aside. But again, I think NC State was one of their toughest tests, and the way they performed, the way they're adapted, certainly says a lot about what Tony Bennett has been able to do with this versatile roster. Well, that's it for this week's show. Sorry that you had to handle my voice being a little funny for the last 2 episodes, but hopefully that will change for next week. And actually, we have a special 2 episodes for next week. I will be on vacation. Yay. But there'll still be 2 new episodes next week, and we're actually going to switch things up. Usually we have a basketball focused episode on Thursday, while a football focused episode on Tuesday. But we're actually going to switch it up because we have a special guest on Tuesday. We'll have Ryan Dunn's father, Ed Dunn, will join the show. We haven't had a For the Love of the Game episode, our series that we started last year, where we invite family members or people that know Virginia student athletes and coaches to the show, so we can get to know these guys a little bit more, these women a little bit more. So Ryan Dunn's father, Ed Dunn, will join the show, and that show will come on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, we'll go on football, and I'm working on getting a guest for that show as well as we look ahead to spring football. So again, we'll be back here on Tuesday with a For the Love of the Game episode where we invite Ryan Dunn's father. And then on Thursday, we'll get back to Virginia football. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. And we'll be right back here on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast on Tuesday. But we're always on Wahoo's 24/7 as we continue to follow the Virginia men's basketball program as they continue their season. And obviously, as we continue to move forward to the 2024 football recruiting class. Hope you guys have a good rest of your week and have a good weekend.